In this episode, we are going to be talking about domain slamming, what it is, and how you can protect yourself. You know, we get so much spam now.
I've done that with scams before. I'm like, okay, this looks like it could be real, but is it? So just doing your research anyways.
So this is an example of one of those letters, but it looks so official that people sort of freak out about it. A lot of this stuff is confusing if it's not your expertise, you don't know it. So almost never a month goes by that I don't get at least one outreach from a client. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Frustrated by Your Marketing podcast. I'm your host, Jim DeMicco. I'm going to introduce myself, and I'm joined by my co-host, Madison McQuistion. And in this episode, we are going to be talking about domain slamming. It's something we wrote a blog about on our website a little over a year ago, and it's something that irks me more than most things in our industry. And so we're going to go through what it is and how you can protect yourself from it. It's something that is a nuisance unless you fall for it, in which case it can be a big, big problem. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's start at the beginning. So domain slamming, we're basically talking about your URL for your website and everything about that. So what is the URL for your website? It's where people go. So for us, it's skyline.com, and somebody types that in and they go to our website. If they email me, it's at my email address at skyline.com, and then that goes, we use Google Workspace for email. So it's very basic. I look at it as sort of a forwarding address, and you purchase that. Usually you go to Namecheap or GoDaddy. A lot of people use GoDaddy. We prefer Namecheap now, but there's tons of registrars out there, and you have your campaign and you register your domain for your new business or your new project. That's the first step. So and a lot of this podcast, I'm going to ask Madison her journey for her author website. So when you went to register Madison Gray, the author, where'd you go? How did you register that?
I just did it straight through WordPress, since I do WordPress.com, because I wanted it to be an easy website builder, just because, I wanted to spend my time writing instead of focusing on my website, which is hilarious since I'm a website designer. But, my focus for that mostly is at website design. It's writing books. So, but I just did it straight through WordPress because it gives you that option. They give you a temporary URL with, WordPress in it. And then you have the option to upgrade it. And I do the annual one. So.
Okay, great. So you register your domain, you use WordPress.com. I know Squarespace does it. I believe Wix has registration. Sometimes these are tied into other things. Google Domains, I think, is now with Squarespace or something like that. I think that got sort of merged into something else. But sometimes you register it with a project. Actually, I would probably recommend against that. And here's my reason for that. So again, this is a forwarding address. So yours is baked into WordPress.com right now. So all of the DNS information, which is telling what to do, is built now into WordPress. So if you changed your mind and you wanted to move it to WordPress.org, or if you wanted to do it on Squarespace or something else, it's a little bit harder.
Actually, I just transferred my website to Wix for a bunch of different reasons, and it was actually a very easy process.
Okay. But now but WordPress.com is still on the hook, right? Or did you transfer everything over?
I transferred everything over.
Okay. So now Wix is hosting it. So again, if it's sort of in that silo, and I want to talk to you about that more, maybe in another episode, that's very interesting. So if it's all siloed in, sometimes it's harder. But anyways, you've registered your domain and you need to now tell it what to do. So a lot of times this is baked in if you're doing it in a situation where, Wix is doing everything. So they take care of all the information to show your site. But all it is it's saying, when someone types in Madison Gray, the author, skyline.com or whatever it is, where are you going to go? What computer server are you going to look at and where those website files are? And so it tells them that. And then for your email, it's saying when somebody sends an email to Madison at Madison Gray, the author, where do we send that? Again, there's MX records for that. So it's sending it all over the place. The domain itself is obviously the branding part of it. And then all of this other stuff lives in there as well and telling it what to do. So it's super important. And the longer you have it, the more important it is. And because now people know, a lot of times people won't search for you. They'll just type it in to the
and it'll just pop right up.
And they'll go right there. So you don't want to lose it. So anyways, so that's at its basic, what is it? So that's what it is. And then, so what is domain slamming or sort of a domain registration scam? And that's what we're going to talk about today. And that's when someone tries to either take that over, or usually to take more money from you than you should be paying for your renewal. So in the grand scheme of things, when you're dealing with a website, your domain is going to be your least expense in a year. It's usually under, I think we pay, because we use Namecheap, it's like $15 a year, something like that for our renewals. If you're with GoDaddy, sometimes it's like 20 something, but it's never going to be really over 25 unless it's one of those unique domains. It's not a .com or a .net. Some of those more unique ones do have slightly higher renewal rates, but it's not going to be in the hundreds of dollars almost as a rule. And so what you'll get, I'm going to share my screen out here because we wrote this blog, and so you guys can see exactly what I'm talking about. So this is the blog that we wrote, 8 tips to avoid domain renewal scams. And this is what I wanted you to see. So this is an example of one of those letters. And
looks very official.
Right. It looks very, aside from the word scam that we wrote over this, obviously it doesn't come in the mail like that. And so you'll get this in the mail. I've gotten hundreds of these over the years for our clients. We get less and less now because of a couple of things, and they'll often get them themselves. And I get every month, almost as clockwork, I'll get a text message or a call from one of our clients saying, I got this. Is this real? Should I pay it? And I tell them no. And the funny part is sometimes it's the same client every year. So I guess they don't take my word for it. I'm not sure. But it looks so official that people sort of freak out about it. And so if I can make this a little bit bigger here, what's your domain name? I have that blacked out. You're going to annual domain listing that they're charging you for. And you also get on their directory. In this case, it is Domain Directory LLC. And the way they get around this is essentially what you're doing is you're paying them for this additional service and or for them to do the renewal for you, which you don't need help with. And by doing that, they transfer you to their domain hosting service, and they charge you, in this case, $289. This is from 2022. And that's what they're going to charge you instead of $15. And then if you look at the fine print, this is not a bill. This is how they get away with it. This is a solicitation. You are under no obligation, et cetera, et cetera. So people freak out and they'll do it even though they shouldn't do it. And there are also emails of this, and there are a bunch of names as well that people, this is not the only company doing it, for sure.
Have we had clients who have paid this before?
I personally don't know of any, but I've read some horror stories for sure. So yes, there are definitely clients out there that have done it, just not ours, luckily. They've always asked us. Okay, so that's what it is. Again, it's somebody trying to fool you with urgency and with some deception to get you to give that to them. And so the question is, how do you avoid this? And what are the best steps to do it? So I'm going to kind of go through this blog. We'll share the blog in the show notes as well. But this is how I think you should avoid it. And this is, again, if you don't fall for it, this is just a nuisance. And you do, it can be a major, major headache. Things that could happen to you is, I've again read horror stories where the domain just gets sort of lost. They don't really care. They're just doing this, the transfer doesn't happen and they just move on. And
doing it to make money.
Right. You don't have any repercussions. These are not people that are going to worry about your website going down. Two, more important, to the more obvious or more common is that, now you're paying hundreds of dollars more per year that you don't have to, and you're in bed with a company that's, again, not trusted. Okay, so how do you avoid this? First, register your domain yourself, which you did, or hire a trusted web developer or IT person to do it, because you want somebody that you trust to have that control so that you can you'll know where it was registered and you'll know to avoid these scams, or so that you can call somebody and say, like, hey, is this real, before you pay it. So that's really important. And know who those people are and tell your team as well. So educate, if more than one person, if you're a bigger company, is involved in this, let them know, like, hey, if anything comes in for anything to do with the website, any sort of fees, whether it's hosting or domains, give Jim a call and he'll let you know if it's a real thing. That's important. I mentioned before, we use Namecheap. Again, it's a little bit cheaper. And the thing I like is that as of a few years ago, when we switched to them, they covered domain privacy for free. I believe GoDaddy might be doing it for free now. It used to be pretty expensive. So I think they're all moving to that. And all that is that when you go to the lookup for, like, the Whois domain lookup, it doesn't say our information. So my email address isn't on there. Our address isn't on there. Now we still get these because they're in old databases, but since we've switched over, slowly we're getting less and less. So it's less likely for someone to find you and come after you for a scam. And then there's sort of hidden stuff. So if somebody did have something that they had to email you for your domain, it would kind of be forwarded through the service. You'll still get it, but they can't. They're going to block all the stuff that's not legit. So that's really, really important. So use a trusted, do it yourself and use a trusted professional to help you with it. And, use a company that you recognize the name of. So in this case, you use WordPress.com and Wix. They're trusted. Namecheap is good. GoDaddy's fine. I'm not a huge fan of GoDaddy, but they're fine too. And then remember, like, where did I register this? Kind of have that in the back of your mind. Try to also, if you have more domains, we have dozens that we manage for ourselves and hundreds for all of our different clients, and try to keep them in one or two places, slowly moving them all over to Namecheap. So I know if I get an email from them, it's legit, and from anywhere else, it's not.
Yeah.
This is a little bit off topic, but also related to just domain use in general, which is don't use an email address to register your domain that's part of your domain. So what people often do is they'll register the domain, and then now they have their new business address, and they make that the contact information for that domain. And if you do that, if for some reason the payment doesn't go through and you're sick and you don't realize it, or it goes to your spam and your domain expires, then your email will expire, and then you can't verify it to get it back up and running.
Yeah.
So, use your Gmail address, use your Yahoo address, use something else that is different, so that way you can
don't lose it.
Right. And if you're working with a third party person, so if we're doing it for you or for a client, then obviously it's not their domain either. That's great. So we can take care of that and that's the thing that's happened the most to us and one of the reasons why I also really like Namecheap is it's very easy to share access between the client and us as the company. And that way we can manage the payments on their behalf, and we can manage anything that'll go down. Because what's happened to us dozens of times is I get a call where I see that the website goes down, and 9 times out of 10, it's their credit card expired and they didn't update it, and the domain expired. And then we have to go through and get that back up and running. And they could lose, half a day of uptime, which depending on the type of website, could be a big deal. It looks a little sketchy. If someone's going there to come to your restaurant or buy, from e-commerce, even worse, then they might assume something's going on with your business. So that's really important. So that's really good. Again, set up that domain privacy however you can. If you're not using a service that does it for free, I would recommend paying for it, especially if it's just one domain. And that way you get, you're blocking your contact information from anybody who's out there. Really important. And so, this is sort of the warning to you. And I'm going to guess that both WordPress.com and Wix had that domain privacy, but you should be on the lookout for this. If you see, if anybody comes to you, I don't know when your domain will probably be coming up for renewal when? In March? When did you remember when you first registered?
Probably around then is my guess. Wow, this year has flown by. Yeah, I would assume it's probably around March or April is when I did it.
And when you transferred it over, did Wix make you pay for another year? Sometimes you have to do that when you transfer.
No, they did not.
No, you did not. Okay. Another way around this too, I don't do this as much because I don't know, it's not as important for SEO, but pay for 10 years of your domain. Pay up front, and that way you're locked in. Even if it's $15, then you're paying $150. You're still $150 cheaper than your scam there. So that's another way to do it as well. Anyways, be on the lookout for those. If you see them, then you'll know that that's something to watch out for. Okay, so that's really good. And then ignore, this is an obvious one, ignore any correspondence from stuff that looks weird or scammy or has that urgency in it. So those letter that I showed you, that's, act now, you're going to expire, anything like that. You're not going to get that from any trusted domain. They're going to say your domain is up for renewal. Usually the way the normal emails go is your domain will be up for renewal on December 15th. We are going to try, we will renew your domain on December 1st, or we're going to charge your credit card on December 1st. It's usually a couple weeks ahead of time, so that way, when very often people don't have their credit card updated, they have 2 weeks to kind of get in touch. And then you'll get an email saying, we tried to process a credit card, it didn't work, and now you've got some time before your website goes down. And really, you usually get another couple weeks of leniency on that as well. but ignore that. And then if you get an email, this is just good for scams in general. If you get an email from someone saying they're from Microsoft and the email comes from an @Yahoo address, or if you get an email from GoDaddy and it comes from a Gmail address, that's sketchy. So the second sort of the hairs go up on the back of your head, just look who it's really from. It'll say GoDaddy renewal services, and then it'll say, GoDaddy whatever @gmail.com. And so that's your sign that that's clearly fake. So avoid that. And so I can read off these. So the list of that I had pulled for this blog of companies that do this: Domain Registry of America, Domain Directory, Domain Listings, National Domains, Simple Domain Hosts, IDNS, Domain World. Those are ones to look out for.
Which is funny because they make themselves seem so legit.
So legit. And it really, if you don't read that fine print, it looks real. Aside from, if I was helping them with their marketing, they'd be better off doing the renewal at the right price and just getting you on the next year, or setting some sort of, you're agreeing to an automatic monthly fee of $15. Hopefully none of that will listen to this, but I think the main reason people don't respond right away is it's so expensive, and that's what gets them. So they would probably be better off charging less on their first renewal, and then there's some kind of other fine print that says it'll be $289 on the next year or something.
Yeah. Yep.
So anyways, those are the ones. And so just in general, there's we get so much spam now that's phishing, and it's the easiest way. And every once in a while, they're usually pretty obvious, but one will be pretty close to real. And I'll notice that it comes from a Gmail, Yahoo, MSN type of address that's more likely just created for the scam, not the company itself. So that's a really good way to do it. I know I mentioned before you can pay ahead for domains. The other one is just set up auto renewals. You have your credit card on there. This way you don't have to worry about it. And so if somebody says you haven't renewed, you don't have to worry about that unless they say your credit card needs updating. And then again, be careful, because it's really important. And then, I can't say this enough, have someone you can reach out to before you pay somebody for something. Whether it's your IT person, your web designer, somebody, whether it's somebody in your company or somebody that you're working with as a third-party resource. And if you're doing this for yourself, then again, hopefully you've got a list. So these are the 5 domains I've got registered. This is when they expire. This is the company I've used for them. Hopefully, again, all one company. It'll make it easier. That way you know what to look for.
Or even like typing it in on the internet. I know I've done that with scams before. I'm like, okay, this looks like it could be real, but is it? So just doing your research anyways can pay off in the long run.
Absolutely. No, you absolutely should do that. And sometimes they're real but fake. For a while, there was a pretty big, I don't know if it was a scam or sort of just sort of a bad practice where Getty Images were going after people for images that were on websites that were not either properly registered, or maybe they were actually stolen or whatever. And they were coming after you for like $5,000 per image or some insane number. And, they got a lot of slack for that. So, you research that, you would see that it was real, but that there was some suspect stuff behind it. So, do yourself a favor, look for it, and to protect yourself on that. That's really, really important. And then if you go to this blog, again, we'll link to it in the show notes. If you're really, really outraged, you can actually report these guys. My guess is they've been reported more times than almost anybody else.
I was going to say, I saw that on the blog and was curious about it, because I was like, sometimes you can report things, but it's, you wonder how long it takes them to like look at it or if it works.
Yeah, I'm still getting them. Again, almost never a month goes by that I don't get at least one outreach from a client saying, and sometimes it's the same client 2 years in a row, but they'll ask just to be safe. Now actually they'll come back and say, this is wrong, right, Jim? Or, this is a scam. Yeah, that's a scam again. Because they don't know. And if you're listening to this and you're doing it for yourself, again, you're sort of in the trenches, but if you're listening to this and you work with somebody, it's a lot of this stuff is confusing. If it's not your expertise, you don't know it. So, it's good to have that person you can ask, and don't worry if you have to ask every year. If they're wondering why you're asking every year, that's their job, is to tell you not to pay it and to protect you. So hopefully you've got someone you can trust on that. So again, to go over this. Oh, and one other thing is, any domain registrar will allow you to lock a domain. I think they do that by default, unless you unlock it for a transfer. That protects you as well. Yes. So, yep. It's just a little, can't be transferred unless you click this thing, and then you get a code. So once you get into a situation, this is not in the blog, but if you pay somebody and all of a sudden they're asking you for a transfer code, that's your sign. Like, you just lost $300, but stop, because you don't want to transfer it because you could lose it. And then it really is your reputation. It depends on, if your company's been around for, again, we've been around for 20 years. We had this domain for most of that, let's say 19 years. If we lost skyline.com, that would be crushing. There'd be a lot of people that knew it, and a lot of people that have emailed us that we'd lose our emails. You'd lose a lot of stuff. You can recover, but it's never going to be the same. You're going to lose your SEO. People are going to think you're out of business. There's a lot of bad that can happen from this little thing. And I'm going to guess most of the time you don't lose it. Most of the time you just lose money. But again, these companies don't really care.
And it's a lot of money too. I mean, $300 is a lot when it's just being thrown out.
That's not, I mean, again, in the grand scheme of things, if you're paying for cheap hosting, that might be what you're paying for hosting in a year. If you're paying for expensive hosting, it might be more than that. It might be your monthly charge. It depends on, again, your traffic, but your domain, when you look at it, it should be the lowest item on there for sure. And so again, to go over it again, the things you want to do is make sure you register your domain at a reputable source and have trusted partners helping you with it. So Namecheap, GoDaddy, Wix, whatever. Make sure that the people that have access to it are yourself and the companies you work with. Make sure you educate anybody who's involved in that, who you're using. So we're using Namecheap, don't pay anybody else. Sometimes, again, there's a hosting person who's separate. We only pay Namecheap and WP Engine. That's it. Okay, great. Ignore most requests otherwise. And if not, you can check out this blog and look at the list from anybody else. More than likely, also, if it's in the mail, that's a pretty good sign. I've never gotten anything legit about a domain in the mail. So, and I've mostly gotten these letters through the mail. That's another really good sign. So throw those things out. Make sure that your domain's locked. Make sure that you have that privacy on there so that you're less likely to get these. Can't say this for certain, but any of the newer domains we've registered, I don't think we've ever gotten one of these four. So when we've registered with domain privacy from day one, again, we registered, I don't even know if domain privacy existed 19 years ago. So they've got our name. So we get it. When our domains come up for renewal, we get them. And I'm sure as domain privacy becomes more prevalent, they'll probably just start phishing, because all you literally have to do is go to a website. You got the domain, look on their contact page, and now mail that letter. Same thing. So I'm sure eventually they'll just start doing that. It just won't be tied up to when your renewal comes. Now it actually does come right around renewal time, which is interesting. And then you're good to go. So this is a short one, but it's something, again, that's
super helpful for me too.
Yeah. So it irks me to no end that it's out there. This is one of my least favorite things about our web design community. And I hope this will maybe save one person from not doing it. So
watch out for them.
Yeah. So watch out for that. And thank you guys so much for joining us. I guess stay safe with your domain, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah. See you guys in the next episode.